welcome to a deep dive about something that I think is super important for all of us Cane Corso owners, and that's keeping our pups safe from toxic plants. I mean, let's face it.
Yeah.
Our Cane Corsos, they're big, they're curious, and they love to explore.
Yeah, they love to use their noses.
Exactly. And that can sometimes lead them straight to trouble, especially when it comes to sniffing out, well, interesting plants, let's say. So today we're going to be talking about the plants we need to be aware of to make sure that doesn't happen.
Absolutely, and it's really important. The ASPCA has some data on this.
Really? Yeah.
That shows that plant toxicity is actually one of the most common reasons that people end up taking their pets to the vet.
Oh, wow.
So you're definitely not alone in wanting to know more about this and make sure that your pup is safe.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit. What are some of the biggest plant villains lurking out there that I need to be aware of?
Well, let's start with maybe a typical walk that you would take with your Cane Corso, starting right outside your front door.
Okay.
And one of the most dangerous plants that you might encounter, especially if you're in a warmer climate, is the sago palm. And it looks kind of like a small palm tree, but it has these really stiff, frond-like leaves that could easily attract a playful Cane Corso.
I can imagine.
And here's the scary part.
Yeah.
Every single part of this plant is toxic, from the roots all the way up to the seeds.
Wow.
And we're talking serious stuff here, like liver damage, and even just a small amount
Oh, my goodness.
can be fatal.
Okay, sago palms,
Yeah.
officially on the watch list. Are there other common landscaping plants that I should be aware of?
Absolutely. Another one that's unfortunately super common is the oleander. And this one's tricky because it's beautiful.
Yeah.
You've probably seen it around, right?
Yeah, with those pretty flowers.
Yeah, with the vibrant, colorful flowers. But
It's deceiving.
yeah, it's kind of a wolf in sheep's clothing, right?
Uh-huh.
Because it contains something called cardiac glycosides, and those can really mess with a dog's heartbeat.
Oh, wow.
And that can lead to anything from like an upset stomach to serious, serious heart rhythm problems.
And in severe cases.
Even death, yeah.
So it's not just about them getting an upset tummy, it's their heart.
Exactly, yeah.
What are some signs I should watch out for in case my pup gets into something like that?
Yeah, so if you see your Cane Corso exhibiting any unusual symptoms, like vomiting, diarrhea, maybe they're lethargic, loss of appetite,
Right.
anything that seems off, especially after they've been outside,
Yeah.
you really want to contact your veterinarian immediately.
Noted. Time is of the essence.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious about azaleas and rhododendrons.
Yeah,
Those are everywhere in my neighborhood. Are those a concern?
they are. And here's why. They contain something called gray endotoxins,
Okay.
and they can actually disrupt the sodium channels in your dog's cells.
Mm-hmm.
And those affect, everything from their nervous system to their muscles. So you can see things like vomiting, diarrhea, weakness, and in really severe cases, they could even go into a coma or die.
So even if it seems like a small amount, like they just nibbled a few leaves,
Yeah.
I should still be concerned.
Yeah. With any potential plant ingestion, it's always better to err on the side of caution.
Right.
And talk to your veterinarian. They can kind of assess the situation.
Perfect. Okay, so we've covered sago palm, oleander, and those azaleas and rhododendrons, all plants I might find just on my typical walk. What about when we head over to the park?
Yeah, good question.
Are there culprits lurking in those green spaces?
Yeah, those idyllic green spaces can actually be kind of dangerous
Yeah.
if you don't know what to look for. So one that comes to mind that's often found in parks is lily of the valley. And it has these really delicate kind of bell-shaped flowers.
Pretty.
Yeah, they're beautiful, but they're pretty potent. They contain cardiac glycosides, just like the oleander we talked about.
Wow, so even something delicate like that
Exactly.
could be so dangerous.
Yeah, it can cause vomiting, irregular heartbeat, and even seizures. So you want to stay away from that one for sure.
Yeah, definitely adding that to my list. What else should I be looking for at the park?
Another one that you might see is yew. It's often found in parks and gardens,
Okay.
especially as hedges or topiaries.
Okay.
And it might surprise you to learn that almost every part of this plant is toxic to dogs,
Oh, wow.
except for the fleshy part of the berry.
Okay.
But the seed inside is highly toxic.
Oh, tricky. So even if I see birds eating the berries, doesn't mean it's safe for my dog.
Exactly. What's safe for one species
Right.
isn't necessarily safe for another.
Okay.
Yew contains something called taxine alkaloids, and it can cause sudden death from cardiac arrest
Oh, my goodness.
in dogs, even in small amounts. So you really want to steer clear of this one altogether.
Wow. Okay, yeah, that's one to avoid. What about castor bean? I've always heard that one is incredibly toxic.
You've heard right.
Okay.
Castor bean contains ricin,
Okay.
and ricin is one of the deadliest poisons known
Really?
to humans.
Oh, wow.
Even a small amount can be fatal to a cane corso.
Wow. Ricin, it sounds like something out of a spy movie?
It does, right.
I had no idea it came from a plant.
Right.
Nature can be so fascinating and so dangerous. So far, we've talked about some pretty serious contenders. Are all toxic plants this immediately life-threatening?
You know, not necessarily.
Okay.
Some plants might not be as immediately deadly, but they could still cause significant discomfort for your cane corso. You know?
Right.
And think of it this way. Some plants are kind of like a bee sting.
Okay.
They're painful,
Right.
but they're usually not life-threatening. Others are more like a hornet sting.
Yeah.
Incredibly painful.
Yeah.
And potentially dangerous.
Yeah.
If your dog has an allergic reaction or some underlying health issues, it's all about being informed, right?
Right.
Knowing what to look for.
So what are some examples of those less lethal but still problematic plants?
Well, let's say you're strolling through a flower garden, right? You want to be really cautious of those classic spring bulbs, things like daffodils, tulips, and hyacinths.
Yeah, they're so pretty.
They are. They look cheerful and inviting, but they contain toxins that can cause intense gastrointestinal irritation.
It's lots of vomiting and diarrhea.
Exactly. Not a fun experience for anyone involved.
Oh, yeah.
And the bulbs are actually the most toxic part.
Oh, yeah.
So if you've got a cane corso who's a digger, you really want to keep them away from these flowers.
Right.
Now, here's one that might surprise you. Rhubarb.
Oh, yeah.
You know how we humans eat the stalks?
Right.
The leaves are actually toxic to dogs.
What? Really? I had no idea.
Yeah.
What makes the leaves so dangerous?
Well, they contain something called oxalic acid, and that can lead to kidney failure in dogs.
Oh, wow. So it's just another example of what's good for us can be really harmful to our four-legged companions. I'm starting to see those common garden plants in a whole new light. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground here, from our hypothetical front yard to the park to the flower garden. It seems like there are potential dangers everywhere.
I know, it can feel a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
But our goal isn't to scare you. It's about empowering you with the knowledge you need to keep your cane corso safe.
That's a good point. I feel much better knowing more about this. What other plant villains are out there that we should know about?
Oh, there are plenty more. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and venture beyond like those well-manicured gardens and parks.
Okay.
Imagine you're exploring a more natural area with your cane corso,
Okay.
like maybe a wooded trail,
Yeah.
or even your own backyard if you're lucky enough to have some wild spaces.
Right.
There are a few kind of sneaky plants out there
Mm-hmm.
that blend in beautifully with the scenery, but they can actually be pretty dangerous for your pup.
Okay, I'm intrigued. I do love exploring those wilder areas with my dog. What kind of plants should I be on the lookout for?
Well, one that often flies under the radar is morning glory. It's got those gorgeous, trumpet-shaped flowers, vibrant colors. You might even have some growing in your garden. But the seeds of morning glory actually contain lysergic alkaloids. They're compounds that are similar to LSD.
Wait, seriously? Like the drug?
Yeah. So if your cane corso happens to ingest the seeds, they might experience hallucinations, disorientation, and some pretty severe, stomach upset.
Not a fun trip for them.
Not at all. No.
It's a good reminder that even plants with beautiful flowers can have a hidden dark side.
Speaking of unassuming appearances, let's talk about larkspur.
Okay.
It's a wildflower. Delicate, kind of spiky blue or purple flowers. You might find it growing in meadows or along roadsides.
Okay.
And it might look harmless,
Yeah.
but it's actually poisonous in its entirety.
You mean every part of it?
Every single part.
Yeah.
Flowers, stems, leaves, the whole shebang. Larkspur contains a variety of alkaloids that can cause everything from, digestive upset to nervous system depression, which can lead to weakness, paralysis, and even respiratory failure in severe cases.
Wow. So from pretty wildflowers to paralysis, that escalated quickly. I'm
Right.
definitely going to be extra careful about letting my dog off leash in those areas.
Yeah, it's a good idea to be cautious.
Yeah.
Now let's circle back to gardens for a moment.
Okay.
Remember how we talked about those spring bulbs?
Yeah.
Well, there's another popular garden flower that, while it's not as toxic as some of the others, can still cause some issues for your cane corso. Chrysanthemums.
Really? Chrysanthemums, those are everywhere. I see them in gardens, flower arrangements, even at the grocery store. What's the problem with those?
Well, they contain compounds called pyrethrins,
Okay.
which are actually used in some insecticides.
Oh, wow.
And while they're not as potent in the plant itself,
Right.
they can still cause a range of symptoms in dogs, including gastrointestinal upset, drooling, and even incoordination.
So my cane corso might start stumbling around like they've had a few too many. It's kind of a funny image,
Yeah,
but definitely not a good situation.
not a good situation.
Are there any other common garden plants that fall into that mildly toxic category?
Yeah, another one to watch out for is English ivy. It's often used as ground cover, and it can easily be mistaken for something harmless, especially by a curious cane corso.
Right. So what's the deal with English ivy? Why is it bad for our furry friends?
Well, it contains saponins,
Okay.
and those can cause vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain,
Yeah.
and in severe cases, it can even make it difficult for your dog to breathe.
Breathing problems. That's
Mhm.
especially scary for a dog like a cane corso with a short snout. I'll definitely keep an eye out for that. What about wisteria? I love wisteria, but I have a feeling you're going to tell me it's bad news.
You're right on the money. Those beautiful cascading flowers, they're tempting,
Yeah.
but the seeds and pods are toxic to dogs.
Okay, so I'm starting to see it in a new light. What kind of symptoms can those seeds and pods cause?
Well, they contain lectins and wistrin glycoside,
Okay.
which can lead to severe gastrointestinal distress. We're talking vomiting, diarrhea, dehydration, so not something you want your pup to experience.
Definitely adding that to my watch list as well. Okay, what about milkweed? I know it's good for butterflies, but I've heard it's toxic to dogs.
You're right. Milkweed is super important for monarch butterflies,
Right.
but it also contains those cardiac glycosides,
Okay.
just like oleander and lily of the valley.
Oh, so even though it's beneficial for one species, it can be harmful to another.
Exactly. Nature can be pretty complex like that.
Yeah.
And milkweed ingestion can cause a whole range of symptoms in cane corsos, from like mild digestive upset to more serious heart and respiratory problems.
Wow, so it's really best to avoid it altogether.
I would say so, yeah.
Okay, I'll have to find some other butterfly-friendly plants for my garden. What about some of the plants with a little bit more of a sinister reputation, like Jimson weed? I've always heard the one is dangerous.
Jimson weed is definitely one to be wary of. All parts of this plant are toxic,
Wow.
and it's not picky about where it grows. You might find it in fields, pastures, even along roadsides.
It sounds like something out of a horror movie. What happens if a cane corso gets into Jimson weed?
Well, it contains tropane alkaloids,
Okay.
and those can cause some pretty scary symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
Hallucinations, dilated pupils, rapid heartbeat, agitation, seizures, and even death.
It's definitely not something to mess around with. Are there any other plants that fall into that highly toxic category?
Yeah, there are a few. Another one is nightshade. It's actually a common name for a group of plants that contain a toxin called solanine.
Nightshade. It sounds like something a villain would use in a comic book.
It kind of does, right?
Yeah.
Well, solanine disrupts the nervous system
Okay.
and can cause a range of symptoms in dogs, including, the usual gastrointestinal upset,
Right.
but also weakness, tremors, and even paralysis.
Wow. Okay, nightshade is going on my villain list for sure. What about elephant ear?
I love those big dramatic leaves, but I have a feeling they're not so friendly to dogs.
You are right about that.
Okay.
Elephant ear contains insoluble calcium oxalate crystals.
Insoluble calcium oxalate crystals.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm already nervous. What do those do to a dog?
Well, imagine chewing on a mouthful of tiny needles.
Ouch.
That's kind of what it's like for a dog who bites into an elephant ear plant.
Yeah.
It causes intense burning and irritation in the mouth and throat,
Okay.
leading to excessive drooling, pawing at the mouth, vomiting, difficulty swallowing. It's just a really, really unpleasant experience.
That sounds awful. I will definitely keep my cane corso far, far away from elephant ear.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. Everything from pretty garden flowers to those wild growing plants with really scary sounding names. It honestly feels like there are potential dangers everywhere.
I can understand why you might feel that way, but remember, the key here is awareness, not fear. By learning about these plants and understanding the risks, you're already taking a huge step towards protecting your cane corso.
Yeah, you're right. Knowledge is power. I'm feeling much more empowered now than I did before we started this deep dive. So, what's next on our plant villain tour?
Wow, it's really amazing how many plants we've learned about today. And it's made me realize just how much is out there that could potentially harm our cane corsos. I have to admit, when we started, I felt a little overwhelmed by all the potential hazards.
Yeah.
But I'm really feeling much more confident now that we've talked about all this. So what are some practical steps that I can take as a cane corso owner to really minimize those risks and keep my dog safe?
Well, I think the first and most important thing is prevention,
Right.
right? We've talked about so many different plants today, and it
Yeah.
might feel like they're lurking around every corner.
Yeah.
But a good first step is to just survey your own yard. Like, really take a walk around and see if you can identify any potential hazards.
So basically, walk around with that mental danger list that we've been creating. It's exactly.
And see if any of those villains are actually in my own backyard.
Mm-hmm. And if you do find some of those toxic plants we talked about, consider replacing them with dog-friendly alternatives.
Oh, okay. So there are other options out there.
Oh, absolutely. There are tons of beautiful and safe plants out there. You don't have to sacrifice having a gorgeous garden just to keep your dog safe.
That's good to know. I'm already making a mental list of some swaps I can make. What if I have some of those toxic plants, but I just absolutely can't part with them? Like, they're my favorites.
I get it. In that case, maybe think about fencing off those areas
Okay.
to keep your cane corso from accessing them. You can kind of create these dog zones in your yard
Right.
where they can explore safely.
Yeah, I love that. Safe zones for my pup.
Okay, so that's in my yard. But what about when I'm out and about, like walking in the park or hiking on trails or just exploring the neighborhood?
Yeah, vigilance is key when you're out and about, especially in areas with lots of landscaping.
Yeah.
You want to keep your cane corso leashed.
To prevent them from just wandering off and, munching on unknown plants. And even if they're usually well-behaved off-leash,
Right.
it's best to err on the side of caution.
Right. Right. Leash training, definitely a must.
Yeah.
Are there any other commands that could be helpful in this situation?
Yeah, consider teaching your cane corso a leave it command.
Yeah.
That can be a really valuable tool
Right.
to help them resist the temptation of those, tempting but potentially toxic plants.
It's amazing how such a simple word can make a huge difference in keeping our dogs safe. Any other advice I should keep in mind?
I think the last thing to remember is that early intervention is just so crucial
Yeah.
when it comes to, potential plant poisoning. If you suspect your cane corso has ingested any plant and you're just not sure about it, contact your vet right away. Don't wait, don't hesitate, even if they're not showing symptoms yet.
Right.
It's always better to be safe than sorry.
100% agree. I'd much rather make the call than regret not doing it. Okay, so let's do a quick recap for our listeners who might be feeling a little overwhelmed by all this plant info.
Sure. So prevention is key. Know your plants, survey your surroundings, and create those safe spaces for your cane corso. Second, vigilance is essential when you're out and about. Keep them leashed and teach them that leave it command. And then finally, if you suspect any ingestion, contact your vet immediately.
Awesome. Those are great takeaways. I'm feeling so much more prepared now to really protect my cane corso from all those sneaky plant villains we talked about. It's interesting how much this deep dive has given me not only that practical knowledge about plants, but also just a deeper appreciation for nature. How something as simple as a plant can have such a huge impact on the health of our furry friends.
Right.
It makes me think about that balance we need to strike between enjoying the outdoors and keeping our dogs safe.
I think that's a really great point. And it's a reminder that we share this world with so many different species, and it's up to us to be responsible.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So, on that note, we'll leave you with one final thought. How can understanding this whole world of plant toxicity actually help us appreciate nature even more? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. Keep those tails wagging, keep those gardens safe, and we'll see you next time.